Coming to you from the mountains and the plain, the only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. As always, my name is Max McGuire.
And I'm Joe Otto.
And today we are talking about the Chinese coronavirus. Again, Joe, the Wuhan flu, or as some people are saying, Kung flu. But you can't say that, because if you say that, you're accused of being a racist.
Oh my gosh.
But the Kung flu. So it's pretty interesting times we're living in. We have the weird situation in this country where abortion clinics are being declared essential, but gun stores are not. And we have Republicans working around the clock over the weekend to get a bill through Congress, a massive $2 to $4 trillion, depending on the final number, stimulus package through Congress. And at the last minute, Nancy Pelosi flies to DC and says, deal is off. We're going to handle this instead. Markets were crashing today at that news. Lots of chaos. Joe, what are you seeing? I know you're in Colorado. I know that your governor just declared a shelter-in-place order. What are you seeing in Colorado right now?
Well, we're seeing hysteria and panic. And by the way, it wasn't the governor that did that. The governor actually came out last night and said, hey, this isn't a mandatory shelter in place. We're just making the recommendation that we cut back on non-essential people and have them stay home.
It was Governor Hancock.
Governor Hancock, yeah. So
Governor Hancock. No, you can't say that word.
Not governor. Sorry.
No.
Mayor Hancock.
If you say his last name, we could risk our family-friendly rating. So we'll just call him Mayor Handjob.
Oh boy, here we go. I wonder. Oh, okay. I'm not gonna laugh. Okay.
No. It's his name is Hancock.
Yeah.
And he has now issued a shelter-in-place order for Denver, which obviously is a huge chunk of Colorado's population. Here in Texas, our governor is reluctant to issue the shelter-in-place order because out of the 259 some odd counties in the state, there are 200 that don't have any cases of the Kung flu. So he's reluctant to issue that statewide order because it doesn't necessarily make sense, people in the middle of nowhere, to have to remain inside if there aren't any cases of the Chinese coronavirus in their counties.
Max,
mm-hmm.
let's quickly talk about this $2 to $4 trillion, right? Let's not talk about what's in the bill, but let's just quickly talk about.
We will talk about what's in the bill, but we can talk about the money first.
Yeah. So the $2 to $4 trillion. I think globally there's about 9,700 people that have died as a result of this. Is that right? Am I pretty close?
I can pull it up right now.
I think it was 9,700, but let's use that number as an example, and let's just go against the $2 trillion. So if $2 trillion was the stimulus package, they're predicting that there's another $4 trillion right now that is of the adverse effect it's going to have on our economy. So you're talking about a $6 trillion just in the United States effect that this coronavirus is having.
Yeah.
Right. And it looks like, okay, we did the math. There's 16,000 people globally have died.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 16,000 people globally that died. We're going to have a $6 trillion bottom line effect on the economy to combat this. Last year, over 200,000 known people died of the flu, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing the bell curve in China fall off dramatically.
Well,
we're seeing
a lot of that though is, Joe, that there's a lot of rumors out there now that China has stopped testing and that they're not testing anyone additional. So
well, we're not testing either, Max. How much likelihood is it that this Wuhan virus, this
Kung flu.
You call it Kung flu. I'm gonna give it a name.
Everybody was Kung flu fighting.
Max. although I think it's comical that I don't think it's comical. I think that our reaction to this is comical because it shows a weakness in leadership and this hysteria that's been created by something that people know very little about. And you can see people in the market that are actually in leadership that are actually talking about this virus and perpetuating some of the false realities behind this virus, right? And so we have 16,000 people dead. We're running around, the sky's falling, the sky's falling, the sky's falling. People are hoarding toilet paper in a way that I don't think is even reasonable. Then they make the run on groceries. Then they make the run on guns and ammo, all because we've created this hysteria around 16,000 people globally dying.
Yeah.
Right. So they say that it's about 3 to 4 times more powerful or more deadly than the flu. The flu's deadliness is about 0.1, 0.2%. If the entire population were to get the flu, it would actually be higher than that, right? But the entire population will not get the flu. But it's 0.1, 0.2% globally. And they're saying that it's about 1%, 1.5% is going to be the fatality rate that they're predicting that the Wuhan virus will have.
Yeah.
So I'm just doing the math of the 8 billion people in the world and the fact that we're willing to create a global recession, right? And we're wrecking the economy, man-made. We're doing a man-made environment to wreck the economy over a virus that may kill 1 million people globally. And the average age, I'm trying to walk through this with you.
Yeah,
right? The average age in Italy is almost 81 years old that is dying from this. And I do realize there are people that are younger that are dying, right? And there are people that have immunity issues that are more susceptible.
And there are people that are older that are surviving. There was a story the other day of a 90-year-old woman who beat the Kung flu and is now recovering. And listen, I don't call it Kung flu to make fun of the virus and say it's a hoax. I call it Kung flu because there's people out there who that drives them insane. And they think that if you call it the Chinese virus or the Wuhan flu, that you're somehow leading to Asian people being beaten in the streets. It's madness. So I don't call it that to make light of the virus. I call it that because, listen, I can't help but get under liberal skin. And in this time, I feel like we could all use a little levity. There are people out there who actually believe that calling it the Wuhan virus or the Kung flu should be a hate crime. So I don't call it that to make light of it. But you're right. When you look at that and when you average it out by how much the spending they're talking about, it's an astronomical number per person per live lost. And you hate having to do that. You hate having to boil someone down into their GDP impact. How much will they contribute to the American economy?
Well, right now, hold on. Let's go back to that right now. Right now, it's a little over $14 billion per person.
Yeah.
So per person that will die in the United States, we are burning down the economy to a rate of $14 billion per person. So a whole lot of people have to die in order for that number to even get, I'm talking hundreds of thousands of people would have to die for that number to get down to a place where it wasn't 14 billion, it was maybe 200 million or 20 million or 10 million. Right? So we're making decisions to wreck the economy. And I'm going to tell you who is adversely affected the most by wrecking the economy. And that is the most vulnerable ones among us. So today, this morning, they predicted that 2.2 million people lost their jobs today. They're predicting in the next 90 days it's somewhere between 8 to 10 million. That's the low range. And almost 30 million people can lose their jobs in the next 90 days. You're talking about 10% of the population, roughly 30% of the working population that is going to be out of work for a virus.
Yeah.
A virus. What they could be doing is saying, here are the things that you need to do. They could have self-quarantined those that are at risk. They could have made it so that it was a little bit more difficult for someone in an aged or retirement community. They could have quarantined those areas. And instead, they quarantined the entire country and they wrecked the economy, destroying the poorest and the most disadvantaged people in our society. And then you know what they did? They came back and said, we're going to now go to the SBA, do disaster relief, and we're going to give you loans. And we're going to give it to you at a low rate, kind of like they do for student loans sometimes. And we're going to run it out 30 years. And you know what? The American people are going to say, thank you for saving us from the crap that you created to begin with.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how angry I am right now because the politicians, the government workers, they are not affected by this. They still get their paychecks. They still get to say, hey, the market went down. Now I get to invest in the marketplace. You know who can't do that? The 2.2 million people that lost their job this morning.
Yeah.
That's who can't do that.
Yeah. And to try to almost piggyback off of your point, Trump put out a tweet last night where he said,
I saw that.
We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself.
Already there.
At the end of the 15-day period, we will make a decision as to which way we want to go. And that's kind of the thing. Even with this shelter-in-place order, which you now have 80 million Americans under shelter-in-place orders, you're still seeing states like California and New York saying with those draconian measures, their projections are estimating that between 40 and 80% of the population will still come down with this virus, even with shelter-in-place orders and curfews.
So then why are we doing it? Why are we doing what are we doing? I just think that sensibility has left the room.
Yeah.
It's left the room. Where is it? Where is the sensibility? You tell me what happens when you destroy the middle class in America. And you didn't get it done one way, so we're going to manufacture it. You got and if I was a conspiracy theorist, which I'm not, right? And by the way, a conspiracy is not a conspiracy if it's actually happening.
Yeah.
But if I was a conspiracy theorist, shouldn't we talk about the fact that they had a investigation into Russia that didn't work? They had an investigation and an impeachment trial that didn't work. So when all else fails, let's manufacture something that we can create hysteria around because someone might die from it.
Yeah.
And then what you do is you play on the conscience of the American people because we're good people.
Yeah.
We don't want anybody to die. So they create this hysteria, and then what they do is they give us just enough information that we have no information.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And so now we're walking around. If we knew what the outcome would be, I don't know of any American, the most vulnerable to the not most vulnerable. I don't know of any American that would say, hey, my life is worth destroying tens of millions of Americans in the United States. I don't know of one person.
Yeah.
But here's the problem we run up against. We have sociopaths in our leadership. They're sociopaths, right? And that's what we're facing today is a bunch of people that care nothing but about themselves. And that $2 trillion to $4 trillion, it doesn't mean anything to them, which is why Pelosi wants to fly back into town and say, deal's off, we're not doing this. Oh, by the way, let's put abortion into the bill. Let's put some union stuff in the bill. Let's load this thing up with pork.
Yeah.
Because we can afford the $4 trillion that we already have. Now, we can't afford that, but let's add more to it. Let's add another burden to the American people to break their back when it has no effect on these politicians.
Yeah.
That's my problem.
So here, this is a quote that just got released today, and it's from Representative James Clyburn of South Carolina, the House Majority. You are fired up. I might just go to the bathroom and let you just handle this because you're real fired up. House Majority Whip James Clyburn. He is now being quoted as saying on a conference call with 200 plus other Democrat representatives. He is now being quoted as saying, and this is a quote, that this whole situation, quote, this is a tremendous opportunity to restructure things to fit our vision, end quote. Democrats are not looking at this as, Joe, that this is ruining the economy. They're not looking at this as, oh my goodness, if we don't take action now, businesses are going to go out of business, people will lose their jobs, they'll lose their homes. They're looking at this as an opportunity to push through the policy proposals that they've wanted to push through for decades. Whether it's universal basic income, which now Republicans are on board. Everyone gets a check during this thing. That's just going to be your thing. Medicare for all, forgiving student loans. In the Democrat bill, the package that they're pushing through, there was a provision to forgive $30,000 of student loan debt per American. That's in their proposal. I don't know if it's in the bill, but it's in the package. It's being proposed as part of the big package. of the legislative package to forgive $30K per person, right? The bill that they pushed out, I've been reading it all day, and I still can't get through it all. And just when I think that I've hit all the major points, apparently it's now getting bigger. But the bill includes, Joe, if they're bailing out the airline industry, it includes fuel standards for the airline industry. It includes subsidies for the solar and wind power industries.
Then tell me how this wasn't manufactured by these Democrats.
Yeah, no.
You tell me why it's not manufactured by the Democrats, and we're basically pork bellying the American people. We're shoving something down their throat because they can't get it done because they know come election time, Trump's going to win again. They're going to lose their seats in office, and we're going to end up having some sensibility return to government. But we can't have that right now. Right now, they can never let an opportunity and chaos go without capitalizing on it. If you don't think that if you think these people care about you, they don't. There is no one in Washington that cares about it. I actually think that Trump does, and he doesn't know what to do with this. I wouldn't know what to do with this. On one side, what if it is as bad as they say it is? And the other side, he has people on his medical team saying, President, you have to let this just go. And we're seeing countries out there, by the way, that are letting it go. The UK is letting it go.
No. The UK, just as we were coming on here, the UK announced that everyone's shelter in place.
The UK did that too.
Yeah, they just did that. They just did that minutes before we came on here. Me. I just want to make sure you didn't go off on a tangent.
Oh, man.
They're shelter in place now too.
It amazes me based on how little people, and I know they're saying that, look, our hospitals can't take the burden, right? But what burden? I put this thing out there and ask people questions, and there are parts of the country that, there's only, I think there's 300, 400,000 hospital beds. And they go, well, with that curve, we're going to blow through the hospital beds. Okay, so you blow through the hospital beds, and then you actually create other opportunities in other areas to use, which is what they're doing now, schools and
colleges, hotels. Yeah. They're actually even talking about making part of the bailout package for like the cruise line industry. Part of the package is that they need to give the government control of their cruise ships to use as hospitals. So yeah, they're thinking outside the box.
But what if people die? What if people die? What if we lose 1 million people globally? What if it is 5 times as bad? What if it's 6 times as bad? What if it's 10 times as bad? I mean, even if it's 20 times as bad, okay, 20 times, we're going to lose 4 million people. Okay, we're going to lose 4 million people. I don't know what to say. 4 million people out of 8 billion people, it just does not seem like an equitable. And you say, well, you don't value human life. Yes, I do value human life. That's why I'm having a conversation with you about straight economics. This is economics.
Yeah.
We're destroying an entire society. We literally will go backwards in time decades. This chaos will create temperatures in different environments of the world where violence will flare. Yeah. And that leads us to something else we talked about gun stores. This hysteria is run on gun sales. People have never owned a gun or coming in to buy guns.
Yeah, no, it's and most of them are first-time gun buyers, or a lot of them are liberals, and they're shocked to learn that they can't just take the gun home with them nowadays with the backlogs in both NICS and the state level background check systems. They're shocked. Like people in California liberals are shocked to learn that they have to wait 10 days in California to take a gun home. They're trying to bribe gun store owners to let them take it home early. And the gun store owners are just talking to them saying, listen, really, really like the fact that you care about this, but where were you when they were passing these laws, right? Where were you when they were passing the background check bill into law and you said it was completely reasonable? Where were you when they passed in California the 10-day waiting period and liberals said it was completely reasonable? This should wake a lot of people up, but you're right. People are scrambling to buy guns. Now, people like you or me, we don't need to run out to the gun store right now to get a gun. We don't need to run out and buy that one box of ammunition that we need. Conservatives have been either tacitly or intentionally preparing for this for a long time, right? Ever since 2013, there's been a hoarding mentality when it comes to guns among conservatives. But when you see a box of ammo and it's a good price, you buy it and just throw it in the closet. These are liberals And these are first-time gun buyers who are now trying to run out and protect themselves because they see that this could get worse before it gets better. And it's really shameful that you see states across the country delaying or forcing gun stores to close, even forcing them to close down. And people who have bought their guns, they've already paid for them, right? Those guns are sitting in the gun stores. The gun stores are being forced closed because they're being declared non-essential. And the people cannot get the guns even if their background check comes back. I mean, this is a wake-up call. Any judge, any actually fair judge who saw this case would rule that this whole system is unconstitutional. You can't do this.
Yeah, I don't even. Unfortunately, the amount of time that we would have to spend fighting for our right that something is unconstitutional now outweighs the ability to actually go to court and actually get your constitutional right protected.
Yeah.
I mean, there's while we're having conversations about coronavirus and how it's they labeled it a pandemic, right? So the flu is a pandemic, right? Let's call it what it is. The flu is a pandemic.
Yeah, it's particularly viral and deadly versions of the flu. Yes, they qualify as pandemics. I don't know if the regular flu qualifies because the regular flu is just every year there's influenza, right? But when you look at things like H1N1, when you look at things like
just
avian
so
flu, these extra dangerous strains, these mutations, absolutely they get qualified as pandemics.
Okay, so a pandemic is prevalent over the whole country or the world. That's what pandemic means. The flu is a pandemic.
Well, yeah, I mean, by that logic, the common cold is a pandemic. Usually pandemics are. I know, but usually pandemics are reserved for not the run-of-the-mill diseases.
So is telling someone they're racist, right? Racist usually comes because you're a racist. But we've actually we've rewritten what racist means. Now I'm coming back and saying, based on the definition of a pandemic, the flu is a pandemic, a common cold's a pandemic. I mean, I'm sure there's 100 different things that we could actually think of right now that people have that are pandemics, right? But we got to the point where now we've created this hysteria around it because they think 20 times more powerful than the flu, right? We create this hyperbole around everything that we say, right?
And meanwhile, the more we're testing, the lower that mortality rate is actually dropping. Now, when I looked at this morning, it might have changed, but it was looking like the mortality rate in the United States is hovering between 1% and 2%, which again is a very bad disease. That's what it would look like that's what it looks like in this country with no vaccinations for measles, right? It's a very very bad disease.
Right.
But again, would you close down the entire economy over a disease like measles that we were not vaccinated for? I don't think so. We survived before the measles vaccine. And that's why I come back to what Trump says. After the 15 days are up, he's going to make that decision. He's going to decide whether is the juice worth the squeeze. Is it worth ruining? And you can argue that it's not.
Math. I did the math before. I mean, I didn't need a bunch of scientists to tell me or a bunch of doctors to tell me that the juice is not worth the squeeze. I didn't need that. Yeah. I found out very quickly when I started looking at my 401k and watching people line up for unemployment, which, by the way, in Colorado will approach somewhere between 400,000 and 500,000 people by the end of April. 260,000 people who were food service workers when they closed down all the restaurants went on unemployment.
Yeah.
And they can only process 10,000 a day.
Yeah.
So you have 10,000 they can process a day. You have 260,000. Someone has to wait an entire 30 days just to get access to the benefit.
Yeah.
Then it's 2 to 6 weeks before they will even see a check. So we're telling the people that are most vulnerable among us, hey, there's this head cold out there. I'm sorry, that's what it is.
No.
This virus.
No. You said this before. Head colds don't cause pulmonary fibrosis. It's not in your head. It actually does go in your lungs. So it's not quite a head cold, but I understand. Okay, keep going. I just want to make sure people don't think that it's like not bad for your lungs, right? Head colds.
It is bad for your lungs.
Head colds.
It is bad.
Yeah. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, and this is me just fired up.
I know. I just want to make sure the fact checkers are out and about trying to take people out. So I want to make sure that we got this. Okay, keep going.
So I'm going to backtrack a little bit because I do get a little fired up.
Yeah,
Right?
it's fine.
'Cause
It's fine.
you have to be
Listen,
careful what words you use because I do know that we'll have 100 people
well,
that'll
listen,
say,
yeah,
"Oh, you
listen,
said it's not a pandemic."
we're now streaming on YouTube right now, and one of YouTube's new terms is that you cannot spread false news, fake news about illnesses, about COVID-19. So I just want to make sure that we're clear because I don't want to get another freaking ban on YouTube for their copy
Telling the
strikes.
truth.
Yeah, exactly. Just
Yeah.
I keep going. Yeah, so the juice is not necessarily worth the squeeze with ruining the entire economy over disease that people are saying we're between 40 and 80% of us are going to get anyway. Keep going.
So we're going to get this. Between 40 and 80% of it are going to get this this virus. We're going to have some immunity gets built up against that virus, which is going to help them create other vaccines in the future if they needed it. Right? We can start using some of these experimental drugs if it's truly as bad as they said, and that the trials are coming out that hey, this has been shown to be a successful remedy for this. Then they should start using those remedies.
And
they should fast track the entire system.
They are. New York and California are both doing statewide testings on the different hydroxychloroquine and I can't pronounce the other one. But yeah, they are now doing widespread trials on this because we have a couple of small trials that show that it works, but largely that still counts as anecdotal evidence until you have a real controlled trial. It's really hard. Joe, I think that one of the things we really need is we need to be able to test people to find out who's already had it. I went to Las Vegas in January, and when I came back, I was deathly ill. It was the worst flu I've ever had in my life. I had body aches. I couldn't stop coughing. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Me, my wife, and my son all had it. My son had a fever of 104 for for 2 days, and that was with we got it just under 104. We got it to 103 for 2 days with baby Tylenol. Mm-hmm. It was a bad disease, and
ibuprofen's really bad for this, by the way. So if you feel like you might have it, do not take ibuprofen. Take only Tylenol.
Well, if you feel you have it, contact your doctor and take their medical advice. But I would not recommend taking ibuprofen. But anyway, the reason I think that I had Kung Flu is because, Joe, you've been to Vegas lately. You see how many people from China are walking around. Parts of Las Vegas feel like you are in Shanghai. Feel like you are just walking around in China. There are Chinese immigrants, not Chinese tourists everywhere, right? So the idea that I could have picked up Kung Flu, in my mind, that feels like it totally could have been that because I have never been this sick in my life. So I want to know did I have it? I want to be able to have a test to see if I had it. Because if I did have it, one, that means I don't need to shelter in place. I can go about my life. And we're going to find, Joe, that tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people, have already had it. They've already gotten over it. And they're sheltering in place for no reason. Right? We have a large chunk of our population who is inside for no reason whatsoever because they already have those built up immunities because they've already had the disease. So I want to know what the testing is going to be for people that suspect they have it. Because if we can clear those people, even if we're going to continue to go down this route, right? Being able to clear the people who've already had it and confirm that, yes, you had it. Yes, you're over it. You have the antibodies in your system. We got to do that because we can't just have everyone quarantining in place for weeks or months on end. You can't do it. We have to at least get the people out of quarantine, out of self-isolation, if we can confirm that they've already had it. But I truly think that I had it because, Joe, I felt like I was dying. I really felt like I was on my deathbed, and I've never felt that sick. And we couldn't get our fevers to break at all. So I know that they are working on some tests like that, but those are the tests I want to see too. In addition to the test to see who actually has it now, see who used to have it, so we can clear them and get them back in the workforce. Right? If a company can realize that they have half of their employees have already had it and they were either had no symptoms or mild symptoms, then there's no reason to be quarantining.
Yeah, well, what if what you're saying, well, let's say that it got out of hand over in China and a big part of the population there smokes cigarettes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a big problem in Italy. And so the population in China, I think it's somewhere around 27-28% of people in China smoke. In Italy, for the population over the age of 50, that number kind of goes up to, I think 36 or 37%. So we're seeing that there's problems that people have, and if you have immunity issues, you're more susceptible to, the mortality rate. You're more susceptible to die from this, obviously. But as we look at it, we don't have any statistics. We don't have any information that's telling us that, hey, this part of the population, if you smoke and you do this and you do this and you do this, you're more susceptible to succumb to this virus.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of telling us that, they make it seem like a healthy person, even 65 or 70, that's lived a fairly healthy life, is has a high susceptibility to die from this virus, and it's just not true.
Yeah.
But they give us just enough information to scare the hell out of everyone, and I think my problem is not the virus, or even the shelter in place would not be a problem if they would just tell us the truth so we can make a decision as a society. But we have this weak leadership that is constantly pushing us and telling us things, and what they tell us ends up not being true, or it ends up being a bunch of hyperbole, or it ends up being exaggerated, or it ends up being filled with drama like we have on the media right now. And it's gotten to the point where, as a society, we don't know who to trust, and so we want to turn to the government to trust them. In reality, we don't trust anyone.
Yeah.
So
no.
As the figures come out, do you want to see what happens in 90 days when they come out and said, this little pill, take it for 3 days and you're fine? You know what's going to happen? We're going to have mass rioting.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, Max, when they came out and said, listen, we're going to not arrest you for petty offenses or non-criminal or non-violent offenses. They did that in Pennsylvania, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they included in that burglary.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking to myself, wait, hold on a second. So someone is going to break into my home, and you're going to consider that non-violent, and so you're not going to arrest them.
Now listen, so that they tried this in California, and what they saw was that the criminals were running into stores with calculators, because they knew that they wouldn't be arrested if they only stole below a certain amount of money for merchandise. So there were actually people running into stores with calculators and on the fly calculating up the cost of the items they were throwing in their cart to steal, just to make sure they didn't cross over the $250 or the $500 threshold, so that they wouldn't be arrested. Yeah, no, when you do these kinds of things, you end up actually prompting people to commit the very crimes that you don't want to prosecute. Well, we have to take a real quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about, specifically, Joe, we're going to talk about the weak leadership that you're talking about. I want to talk about the Democrat bill, because not the Democrat bill, but also the Democrats' decision to filibuster the Republican stimulus plan, because I have never seen anything more egregious in my entire life. So we will be right back.
Ronald Reagan famously said that our freedoms are never more than a generation away from extinction. Conservative Daily exists to make sure that never happens. With our community of 700,000 members, we fight every day to hold Congress's feet to the fire and stop them from surrendering our rights and freedoms. The fight to take this country back is not over. Please join our movement right now by going to conservative-daily.com and clicking the subscribe button to sign up for our free call to action newsletters. We have a chance to save this country, but only if we all work together. Again, this is conservative-daily.com, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button at the top.
And we are back. We are back. We are talking coronavirus. We are talking the economic fallout from the coronavirus. And Joe, you're absolutely right. There is a very high likelihood that when we look back on this, we will realize that this was an overreaction, and that we will wish that we didn't take these kinds of efforts, because closing down New York City, forcing 80 million Americans to self-quarantine, shelter in place, the economic impact of that, it's almost immeasurable. But I want to pivot now, because you talk today, you've talked in past episodes about weak leadership, bad leadership. Over the weekend, Republicans in the Senate stayed in D.C. They didn't go with their planned recess. They stayed in D.C. to work out a compromise bill between Democrats and the White House. And that compromise bill was, as we've said, was going to be between $1.5 to $4 trillion, depending on what it ultimately ended up being. But it was going to be trillions of dollars. It was going to prop up businesses, give them loans, give them grants to stay in business, to make sure they didn't have to shutter. Now, contrary to what Democrats have claimed, is that those loan programs actually included a lot of strings attached. They capped CEO pay. I think it was $400,000 or $425,000 a year. It also stipulated that in order to receive these loans, a business would have to maintain the same payroll rate that they had on March 13th, meaning that they would not be able to take these loans and then lay people off. And the loans were super low interest. You had a 30-year period to pay it back. This was a deal. Now, I didn't like a lot of parts of the bill. I thought a lot of it went too far. But I understand that in this moment, we need something. Someone needs to do something.
Right.
And the idea that bill failed. That bill failed last night. It failed. The Democrats filibustered it. Now, for people watching, there's two types of filibusters. One is like an old-fashioned filibuster, where you see someone like Rand Paul or Ted Cruz get up there and they'll speak for hours on end, trying to run out the clock. That's a main filibuster. But there's another kind of filibuster, which basically means you're denying cloture. So cloture means that you need 60 votes to end debate on a bill. In the Senate, technically, you only need 51 votes for a bill to pass, but you need 60 votes to end debate. So if you cannot get 60 people to agree to end debate, then technically the debate keeps going and you can never get to that final vote. So last night, Republicans were down 5 senators because they already had 5. You had Rand Paul, who's been tested positive, and you had 4 other Republican senators who were in self-quarantine, just to make sure they didn't have it. So that meant that it was 40. I think it was 47-47, the split. They needed a lot more Democrats on board. It shouldn't have been a problem. This was a bill that they've been negotiating with the Democrats. It's chock full of Democrat proposals. Should have been easy to push through. Nancy Pelosi.
Why are we not pissed off?
Yeah, no.
Stop there for a minute.
Yeah.
Why are we not pissed off as a people? Why are we not storming the state houses? Why are we not protesting? I'm talking mass protest. I don't have to agree with anything that somebody else believes. I don't have to believe in your right to choice versus a right to life. I don't have to agree on anything. What we can universally agree on as a society is that the government should not be able to ruin the lives of a third of the people in the U.S. It should not be allowed.
And that's ultimately the question. Nancy Pelosi came in at the last moment and said, nope, we're not doing this deal. She ruined it. The Democrats decided to tuck their tail between the legs. And even though they said they would vote for it, they decided to vote against it when it actually came up for a vote. So the real question, Joe, is how many lives were ruined just now because of these antics? Now, you say ruined. It's not necessarily permanent because this bill could get pushed through. But how many Americans are suffering right now because of the games being played in Washington? How many people are suffering, really suffering? They're laid off now. They're laid off, and they have no idea where their next meal is going to come from. They have no idea how they're going to pay their car payment or their mortgage. They're suffering. How many people? Can we measure it? I don't know.
Let me measure it for you. So let me tell you why I'm so fired up. It's no secret that I am involved in, and I don't talk about it much, but I'm involved in and have other businesses. I employ a lot of people. And in those different companies, some of those during this panic or this hysteria are doing really well. Others are not. And one of the businesses that we have has about 75 employees and on the team. And on Friday, we had to, based on just a retraction that was happening in the marketplace, we had to make some really hard decisions. And that resulted in 9 people being furloughed. So we have a really solid team. We don't have a lot of people that ever leave us. But we had to make a decision to do a couple things to make sure we preserved the majority of the team if this went on for a long time. And as a business owner, you have to make those decisions based on, all right, how much cash flow do I have that I could draw this out with the team so that people at least have a job, right? And some of the positions, actually a lot of the positions, are highly paid positions. And so I had to make an announcement on Friday because I couldn't see an end in sight, because they don't talk about the end in sight. They don't talk about the reality of, okay, this could last us 30 days, could last us. They talk in it could last till August, or it could last till July. Well, when it gets warm, it'll actually stop, right? So I had to make decisions for the health of the organization to furlough people. And I told every one of those people, hey, we're in this furlough. You're going to come back in 90 days. I'm going to find a way to get you back in 90 days. And it was hard for me. So I'm standing in front of the team of 70 people, and I started crying. It crushed my soul to have to stand up there, because I could have stood up there no problem. I could have stood at the front of that room and looked into those people's faces had I done something wrong, and taken responsibility for things that I did, decisions that I made or that our executive team made that adversely affected their life. I would have been willing to do more in other areas. And as it is, I'm doing some personal sacrifices to make sure I can protect the families and the people that work for the company. But what I can't stomach is the reality that I didn't do this.
Yeah.
We, as the American people, we didn't do this. We didn't cause this. This was caused by someone else.
This was caused by someone in China eating a bat.
It's not. We don't even know.
That's one of the theories. We don't even know. The other one is that someone copulated with a monkey. I don't know which one's better.
But there is a reality that we have to talk about, and that is they are burning down our economy. They are ruining people's lives. They are taking away hope. And by the way, despair and hunger will kill far more people.
Yeah.
As a result of this than any amount that could be killed because of that virus.
Which is why I come back to this Nancy Pelosi Democrat plan, say, no, we're not going to do the bill that you've just spent all weekend working on. We're not going to vote for that. We're going to do our own bill. Then hours later, they drop a 1,100-page bill that's now grown to 1,400 pages, allegedly. And it's full of pork, Joe. It's full of
pork.
One of the provisions is that I believe it's companies that receive the bailout money are going to have to be more transparent on their diversity procedures and their diversity.
Yeah, we'd fly through
their
that.
Diversity. I know. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they're not just trying to save the American economy. They're trying to use this as a means to push their own agenda. They've wanted to have mandates for diverse boards of directors, right? Liberals have wanted to do that for a long, long time. They're using this as an opportunity to do that. They're using this as an opportunity to close down gun stores, to stop people from buying guns. They're using this.
That's not going to happen. It will take the National Guard. Will be on our side. That won't happen.
In some states, they are doing it. So when you go through this and you're like, well, why are they just shoving in parts of the Green New Deal into this, right? Why are they forcing businesses to publicly report on their diversity numbers? Right? Why are they doing this? And the reason they're doing this is because they think they can get away with it. They think that they can actually use this crisis to their personal advantage. Just like when Nancy Pelosi tried to push through language that would make it possible for abortion clinics to bill the government for their procedures. Right? They think they can get away with it. And I want Trump to get up there, and I want him to call him out. Trump's done a very good job of rising above the political fray. But what Nancy Pelosi did yesterday and what Democrats did last night is freaking egregious. It is disgusting. There are Americans today who have no job, who have no income. They're going to have to wait days, weeks, months to get those first checks from unemployment. There are people today who would still have a job if this bill would have gone through. Their bosses, their companies would have saw a bill go through and said, "Okay, there's hope. I can string this along for a couple more days, maybe a week. I think this actually has a chance of passing." Instead, they killed it. So if you're a business owner struggling to hold on, and you see that the bill that would save your employees, allow you to keep them on payroll, gets shot down, of course you feel like there's no other choice but to let people go, to lay them off. So it's a non-zero number, but it's a large number. There are, if not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Americans today who are in a much worse position, if not unemployed, because of this stunt that Democrats pulled, all to try and push through Green New Deal stuff, to try and push through student loan forgiveness, all these Bernie Sanders, democratic socialism, Green New Deal nonsense. That is what they've been pushing for. So it's how do you combat that? How do you fight back against someone who cares so little about the country that they would hold American families and American businesses hostage to try and push through their agenda? How do you fight back against that? Because as I see it, they care so little about the American people. You can't say you care about your constituents when you shoot down a stimulus bill because you want better fuel efficiency standards for airlines. You can't claim it. You can't say you actually care about your constituents. So I don't know how you negotiate with these people. They're so deranged. They're so radicalized. They're not rational people. They're not rational thinkers. You cannot look at them and say, if you don't do this, people will die. People will lose their jobs, lose their homes. They don't look at that. They look at this as, oh, this is our chance. This is our chance to give better subsidies for the solar panel industry, for the wind energy industry. This is our chance. We can do that. I don't know how you negotiate with these people. I don't know how you pressure these people because they care. I know
how you do.
Well, yeah, you drag them out of office by their ears or by their hair.
No, you don't drag them out by their hair. You rise up as the American people for the American people,
but you
regardless
can't.
of race, religion.
You can't rise up. You can't rise up when you're on quarantine orders. That's the whole thing. They can get away with pretty much anything. Because
they can't.
80 million Americans.
We can all decide to leave our houses.
Yeah.
We can all decide that we're going to go down to the state house. We can all decide that, hey, this social distancing, stick it in your ear.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that the best time to pull this nonsense is when tens of millions of Americans can't leave their home to go protest, right? This is for them, for the tyrants, for the you call them the sociopaths, for the people who don't actually care about their constituents. This is the time to get away with stuff. There'll be a reckoning come November. Make no mistake, there'll be a reckoning. But right now, like, they are protected by social distancing. It's so I don't know how you convince someone to care when they don't.
My life. That's how you convince someone. My life, my family's life, the preservation of my neighbors and my friends and my family is more important than you telling me that I'm going to get this coronavirus. Because, by the way, the coronavirus may kill me, but this is going to kill me. This is going to kill my hopes, dreams, not just for me and my wife, but for my family, my kids, their families. This is going to affect generations of people. This is affecting people who maybe had risen up out of a impoverished environment, went and got a job for the first time, got their first house, and they just got laid off. And by the way, because there's indecisiveness and there's this friction that's being created by pork, all we're seeing now, right now, is the American people flounder and burn. We're burning to death while we have created a new caste of people. Government workers, large corporations, and politicians are now at the top of the earners and the wealthy in our nation. They're the wealthiest, and they do the least.
So let's go.
Politicians and government workers do the least.
We're up against. We're not at a hard break right now, but we're coming towards the end of the program. I want to list off some of the things that other people have found, because I haven't been able to read through this while we've been on this show. Just some of the other bits of pork that have been shoved in this bill. So it's actually now down to $10,000 in student loans. The Democrat bill, would push for same-day voter registration, early voting, voting by mail, and ballot harvesting. Ballot harvesting is when a dark money group can pay people to go door to door, and instead of just telling them that they should vote for a candidate,
they can pick it up.
They can basically say, "Oh, do you have your ballot on you? Fill it out right now and give it to me." And then that canvasser will bring their ballot to the polling place, right? So it's actually pressuring people in real time. Fill it out and give it to me. So that's how you steal elections right there. It will preserve collective bargaining powers for unions. As we said, it would expand the wind and solar tax credits. It would set requirements for federal and corporate entities to publicly release, and we mentioned this, both gender and racial diversity data. It would bail out the post office. It would automatically extend non-immigrant visa programs. It would restrict colleges from providing information about their students' citizenship status. So if you're an illegal alien out of college, you would not...
This is everything they're putting inside of this stimulus bill.
Yep. And, of course, it includes money for Planned Parenthood. This is all what's in it. And yes, it's now up to 1,400 pages. They are trying to tank the economy, and they're trying to hold our country hostage to get their pet projects, to pay the post office union, to prop that up, right? To help the unions with their collective bargaining, to help Planned Parenthood. This is their giveaway. They complain that Republicans are all about the corporate giveaways, right? And whether or not that's true, I disagree that's true, because when you save a corporation, you're not just saving the corporation, you're also saving the employees, right? You're saving the employees, you're saving the families of the employees.
But Max, I would rather them give that money to the small business or medium business environment. That's what I would rather do that with, right? Because actually that's where a majority of the backbone of this country lies, right?
Yeah.
And I would like to see have the ability for restaurants to actually recover and not have low interest, but zero interest. I would like to see some of that be converted from a loan to a grant based on bringing a large majority of their staffing back. I'd like to see something in there that forces landlords and banks to do deferments for 90, 120 days with no payments at a zero interest, because they can actually go to the Fed and get that money for that. I would like to see big businesses and banks not benefit from this, but actually support the American people. Oh, so those are the type of provisions I think are necessary.
There's another provision, Joe, in the bill. It orders federal agencies to maximize their use of minority-owned businesses and minority-owned banks. So that's in there. So this is not only is it a bailout, but it's a bailout for specifically, there's extra provisions in that for minority-owned businesses and minority-owned banks. Listen,
so we're going to burn down people that have had generations because of their color of their skin. So now you have to be an apologetic about, or you have to run around saying like you're Pocahontas, that you're something you're not, in order to get the benefit. I get it.
Yeah, no. No matter who's in power, when you write these bills, you end up, whether you like it or not, picking winners and losers, right? Some people get more than other people. Republicans are obviously want to save the businesses, but they also included cash payments to American families to help them as well. So save their jobs and provide extra stimulus to the economy to help them get through these hard times. With Democrats, they want to screw the businesses over, right? They don't really care about the employees, but you see they're going down, we're going to help people who need abortions. We need to focus on that. We need to make sure the abortion clinics stay open. Oh, what else are we going to do? We're going to make sure that minority-owned banks, that they're going to get a leg up over the white banks. Can't have the white banks profiting. It's insane, Joe. It's insane. These people, it's not about America to them. It's not one country. They truly see it as the coalition of brown. They see it as their minority supporters. They want to help each individual part. You have Democrats out there saying that part of the bill should make sure that transgender surgeries are considered essential. Joe, it's gotten insane. It's gotten insane that you have people out there using their mouthpiece as saying that one of our priorities should be to make sure that transgender surgeries go on as scheduled. It's insane. It's insane how little they seem to be taking this seriously, and it's insane just how much they've jumped the shark. I mean, people are hurting, and they're running around talking about these pet projects. I don't understand how they think they're going to survive this. Because when this quarantine, when this self-quarantine, when this shelter in place lifts, there's going to be a lot of pissed off people. Even whether this is overblown or not, there's going to be a lot of pissed off people. And I don't know how Nancy Pelosi survives this. I don't know how, and I mean survive politically, not talking about a call to violence, fact checkers. I don't know how these people politically survive this. I just don't. I don't know. I don't know how you can do that and survive, because it's disgusting what these people are doing.
And they still get paid, Max.
And they'll still
They
get
still
paid.
get paid. They still get their payment. They still get it.
Yeah, no, they get paid whether the government's open, whether it's shut down, whether the economy's open, shut down. They still will get paid. Joe, this is
the hardest podcast I think I've ever done.
Well,
it's hard for so many reasons, because I'm sitting in here thinking to myself, how could we do it differently? What could we do? And I don't think that there's an answer outside of the American people rising up. And you would say you can't call people to violence. I didn't call people to violence.
Well,
I called people.
I know.
I'd called people to put the same fear in our politicians that they put into our lives.
Yeah.
To put the same effect in the politicians that they put in our lives. See, they get to go put their feet up and have a cocktail, have someone bring them something. They get security. I mean, they have it all, right?
Yeah.
While the rest of us are burning, and I don't mean the rest of us meaning there's different levels to burning, right? But I'm talking about people who truly are just in pain.
Yeah.
Right? They're scared, and they're losing everything that they've worked their entire life for, and now they get to the point where they may give up, and then you lose people, right? You lose people to suicide, you lose people to hopelessness, you lose people to a broken heart when they see their stocks have dropped 70%.
Yeah.
And they can't actually support themselves, and they got to go work as a checker at Walmart. Right? Which is not a bad job, but when you're 65, 70 years old, that's not the life you picked for yourself.
It's especially not a good job when you want to socially distance yourself.
Right. Yeah.
The greeter. No, it's like if this virus kills people, that's one thing. But if people die because of panic, if people die because of the politicization of this whole process of Democrats holding up aid to get their own pet projects funded, if that's what kills people, that's what could cause a revolution. I don't see people revolting over a virus, but if they truly believe that their lives are being ruined because of because of political greed or basically political opportunism, then yeah, you're going to see people get angry. You're going to see people get very, very angry. And again, not a call to violence, but it's if you're a politician who casts that vote to withhold aid from an American family or American business that needs it, I wouldn't walk alone down the street. I just wouldn't. I can't imagine that someone could cast that vote and think that they're safe walking around this country. I just don't know.
Boston Tea Party. Yeah. Boston Tea Party. That's where it started, and that's where it ended for us. When we decided that we wanted to take our freedoms back and we weren't going to be sharecroppers. And the same thing is happening to us today. We're in a place today where we are sharecroppers in our own environment. We don't own our own companies. We can't tell people what to do or how to do it. We have to give them all sorts of entitlements. We are restricted on the type of work that we can ask them to do. It literally is strangleholding us. We now work for the government. We don't work for ourselves.
Yeah.
And now they've destroyed our economy and taken away our livelihoods. And they're basically saying, and you say thank you. I don't want to submit to that. And I don't think any American here wants to submit to that. And I think that sooner or later, they're going to wake up and say, we've had enough.
Yeah.
We've had enough. And I think that is the place that I want to get Americans to, is to tell the politicians, we don't work for you. You work for us. But that's not happening. They are ruining people. So at some point, we have to stand together and set aside our social differences, set aside even some of our economical differences, and tell them that what you're doing to us is destroying us as a people.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess that's a good time to cut it here.
Ronald Reagan.
So, again, if you like this kind of content, please make sure that you subscribe and comment and share it. And let us know what you want us to talk about on these podcasts. Right now, it's kind of hard to change topics because this is what's really going on in the news. But we want to make sure that we're providing the content that everyone wants, and we can have that kind of engagement with the community. So again, my name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Otto.
And remember that the fight to take back our country is not over, but the only way we can win is if we all do it together.